Welcome back to Block TV. It's time now for CryptoGlobe, where we take a trip around the world and hear about the latest developments in the industry. And to guide us on this tour de force, I am joined by the one and only Ethan Pierce, director of the Paris-based Crypto Assets Institute, today talking to us from Dayton, Ohio. Ethan, a Merry Christmas to you, a Happy Holidays, and firstly, welcome
Happy Holidays.
Back to Block TV. All right.
Always a good thing.
Absolute pleasure, as always. And to kick us off this week, we're starting with a story coming out of South Korea, where the largest telecom company in that country is developed a blockchain-based local currency for one of the major cities, Busan. This story seems to have a number of layers to it, so help us break it down, Ethan. What does it all mean?
So we've talked a lot about in the past couple months that they created this blockchain kind of economic development zone in Busan. Talked about the fact that Korea has been very blockchain friendly, but maybe not necessarily crypto friendly for a lot of these things. And so, but we see things moving more and more forward along around regulation for crypto assets and a willingness to embrace that more and more. But the blockchain stuff is really scaling significantly, and a lot of, pretty much every large corporate in Korea is doing something in the space. There's all kinds of projects across pretty much any of the verticals that you can think of. And so this one, taking one of the largest telecom companies, along with the second largest city, and coming up with, basically this is a blockchain-based digital currency to facilitate small business payments. And so the idea is it has its own wallet, and it also, well, not really a wallet, more a payment app, kind of a wallet. It's not a cryptocurrency in the pure sense, but and then it also works with the two largest banks. And the idea is to encourage small business engagement in spending. They've developed this digital currency to work with. And so it actually will work in pretty much any store or restaurant or wherever across Busan that has a credit card terminal, with the exception of the larger malls and department stores, because they want to basically stimulate small business spending. And so it's not a super complex story in the sense that there's not a lot of newness to the idea. It's significant because of its scale. Busan is, I think, 3.5 million people. This is the largest telecom, as we said, in Korea. So the marriage of these two things is a very significant deployment. This is not a beta. This is going live, I think, on December 30th. So this is a very interesting, scaled out, blockchain-based payment solution. I think that's pretty cool to see this kind of development and this kind of push. I also think that it will, this is the kind of thing to encourage other people to build solutions, whatever they might be, around the blockchain and around digital currency. In this case, one of the ways they're going to stimulate it is it's kind of like an Apple Card. You get 6% back whenever you use this digital currency. So you're getting 6% cash back by switching over to using this payment system. So by kind of pushing the adoption in that way, they should get a pretty quick adoption of using this. And those kind of behavior changes will just enable facilitate that much more other people building really cool solutions, and people just kind of becoming agnostic to how they pay for things, where that store of or transfer of value is coming from. I think this could have some pretty significant impact, and we're going to see many other things. Kakao, which is the largest internet company in the region, is also coming up with its Clayton cryptocurrency this next year. And I think we're going to see a whole lot more interesting things. This is not tradable. So, this is going around the crypto problems that Korea has historically, not really supported or wanted to encourage. And so this isn't crypto in that sense, but it's just about the idea of building a digital currency. And while we keep talking about central bank digital currencies and how much cool stuff is and will happen in that space, this is a regional version of that, not backed by the government at all. In that sense. It's a project of the government, but it's a large corporate plus the financial sector, the banks, that are making this happen.
Right, certainly a push from the private sector, a different way of approaching this, but having that large-scale investment, always important. But turning now to France, where they're taking a bit of a different approach, this coming from a more top-down governmental approach, with the financial watchdog approving the first ICO under a new visa scheme. Now, this is an interesting one to me, Ethan, because a government actually approving an ICO lends some credibility to the space, to the idea, perhaps some investment fortitude and security for those looking to invest in this particular coin. What can you make of all this?
So we talked about this a bit back in the spring whenever the PACT law was passed. So the PACT is an economic development law that covers all kinds of things in the French economy, but they included a lot of very interesting perspective and regulation to allow us to start having more clarity about how to deal with crypto in general in France. And one of those things with this ICO visa, so the AMF is the monetary authority of Singapore, stuck in my countries, of France, and this, kind of like the SEC in some ways, but not exactly. But they're the ones that are responsible for anything related to offering up an investment scheme, whether it is institutional, accredited, or even more so towards retail investors. And so by providing this ICO visa, the concept was they're building a framework that allows you to, if you tick all the boxes and you have a white paper that investors can easily understand, you've got the appropriate custody solutions in place, and everything is being done in a way that validates the integrity of the company of the ICO. So not the business model itself, because that's just entrepreneurship. So these things will work or will not work, and that's just how that will go. But at least you're not going to deal with companies that don't exist or that have lazy custody of the capital that they're being given through the ICO or other things, or just kind of this gibberishy kind of white papers full of lots of complicated but not terribly actually accurate or realistic things. So all of that then allows you to get a stamp of approval to be whitelisted from the AMF, and that whitelisting allows you to do lots of different things. Will allow you to more easily get a bank account. I saw somewhere that it was saying that this gives you a guaranteed bank account. According to what I read and the people that I spoke to at the AMF, that's not the case. They can't force a bank to give you a bank account. But what this does is this removes the risk potential for the bank to have given a bank account to a crypto project by at least you've been whitelisted by the monetary authority. So they're going to be much more likely to open up that system to you. But it will do other things as well. If you are whitelisted like this particular one, this France ICO is the name of the ICO, I'll explain in a second, then that will allow you to be able to go to retail investors and to have the stamp of approval that you're at least a valid business. Beyond that, this is not talking about tokenized securities and security tokens. It's not talking about other certain things. This is very much focused just around utility tokens. We know that most of that has dried up in the sense of running token offerings is one thing, getting people to invest in them is another. So it will be interesting to see where these go. These are not large. This is €1 million, the one that's coming up with France ICO, which actually in and of itself is a platform for raising capital through ICOs. So the first one that they're whitelisting is actually a platform that would then go on to help others to do this. I think this continues the trend that I've highlighted, that I think France is becoming one of the coolest places in Europe to potentially do anything in the tokenized space, especially eventually around tokenized securities, but anything in crypto, if you're dealing with B2B, because you need to have the large corporates, the large financial institutions trust you, have, with risk tolerance to be much more able to engage with you from a regulatory standpoint, all these kind of things. I think that the PACT law and the things that they continue to do and will follow up with this on in terms of regulation will create a much more clear and transparent situation for people who are doing business in that space, especially B2B. B2C, we'll see. It might be a little expensive on the tax side, but on the flip side, you know exactly what you're getting from the regulators, and you've got a very clear path to have a conversation. They're very accessible. So I think this is really exciting. It's sad that the word ICO keeps being attached to it, because that's kind of dried up everywhere else. But that's
certainly,
okay.
Yeah, certainly it has some sort of limiting connotations, as it were, some negative connotations from the past. But now turning quickly over to China, where authorities have seized nearly 1,000 crypto mining machines in a country that has around 2/3 of the Bitcoin hash rate power inside the state. A worrying sign potentially for some. They say these miners were consuming electricity illegally. What's the deal with this story, Ethan? What can you tell us?
So we have seen a certain crackdown on miners around the fact that on the crypto side, as far as exchanges being illegal or the mining activities being illegal in certain regional governments, there has been a crackdown on the mining itself in some places. This particular case is actually just about electricity theft. So because you're having to register, potentially pay a higher price for electricity, which is still really low in this particular region, people are going around that even still and tapping into electricity where they can and siphoning that off. So basically, as they see that, they monitor that there are weird peaks of electricity usage in places, and they go and track it down. Some of these miners are using, one miner is using the same electricity as a single household or dozens of households. So they're noticing this peak, rather easily whenever they switch over to different, whenever they're moving the electricity sources around. This was really at this point just about the fact that they were not legally allowed to be using the electricity that they were taking. They weren't paying for it. It was that kind of a thing. It's not specifically related to shutting down crypto mining per se. But I think this is a very interesting story just because it highlights, 7,000 is a lot of machines, but it's not. That it's still only a small fraction of what's out there. But when we look at the fact that just in 4 regions in China, we have 65% of the world's hash rate. And in fact, just one of them, Sichuan, is 50% of the world. So the other 3 just make the other 15%. So when you look at what could happen if we see wholesale shutting down of network access, in terms of Bitcoin or other eventual crypto processing in that sense, that's problematic when we talk about sovereign plays into the Bitcoin or crypto space. If you're basing your economy, or if you're tying any kind of monetary policy or anything to whether it's Bitcoin or eventually other things, and the mining of that particular cryptocurrency or coin is controlled this much by another government, more or less, their ability to shut that down in and of itself can cause severe economic problems for governments or large corporations or other platforms that are leveraging this. So it's not really an anti-crypto mining thing in this particular case, but I do think it highlights the problem of having, what happens when we have that much of the hash rate focused in one single place, and the ability for that to get not even manipulated, but simply just removed, and what that could potentially do to the availability of the network to, this is not enough to make that happen, but in the eventual, 65%, however, there's a lot could be done to really slow down Bitcoin transactions by affecting this or limiting it by geography, all kinds of things that could potentially, this, for me, I see it more as kind of, this is why we need to have more of this around the world, which is why Bitmain is opening the largest crypto mine in Texas, why the Nordics are going super fast and strong towards more and more mines with great access to cheap power. I think this is really important for sovereign, for countries that are looking to put any of their economy in any way attached to crypto, that we protect that sovereignty by having the hash rate of these things distributed as much as possible around the world. So anyways, interesting story. We'll see how much this more continues, but they continue to crack down on this in China. So I think this won't be the last time we hear about medium to large seizures of equipment.
Certainly, it doesn't seem like China will be leaving the headlines anytime soon. Ethan Pierce, director of the Paris-based Crypto Assets Institute, I want to thank you so much for joining us this week on Block TV, and I'm sure we'll have plenty more to discuss next week. In the meantime, stay with us at blocktv.com for all the latest in news and information. I'm Asher Westrop Evans, and thanks for watching.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.